Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Nuriki's Game Master Tips, and today we're talking about inspiration. So,
Wait a minute, who the hell are you?
oh, sorry, I'm Ted.
And I'm Dave. And just remember, Nerdarchy, for
For
nerds, by nerds.
So, as I said, talking about inspiration. So, as pretty much the resident DM for the longest standing with our group, what inspires you as a DM? How do you draw into your campaign?
Player death, screaming.
No.
Dismemberment. Oh, wait a minute. Where do I come up with the ideas for the player's death?
Yeah. What gives you the information as the setting for killing those players?
Okay. We're just kidding, folks. I don't really kill players that often. I haven't killed anyone in a long time. But, it really, that is like one of the problems that I see DMs that struggle with. And I think we've all struggled with is, what do you do? Where do you go from here? And inspiration. But, fortunately for me, I'm an avid reader. I like to watch movies, and I used to read tons of comic books. So right there is like a plethora of, source material for you guys to go to and pull from. I mean, I gave you all the novels I had from, that I collected over the course of a couple of years after I'd already gotten rid of a bunch. and how many books do you think I gave you?
Oh, I don't know. I would say about 300.
Right. And that was the second time I did that. So, honestly, everyone wants to be original, but the problem is everything's almost been done, right? Occasionally you can come up with something a little bit different and put a new twist on it, but you're not going to reinvent the wheel.
So the trick is to find something that your players aren't aware of or haven't seen before.
Well, that sounds like a good idea, but I don't think so. They're probably just as geeky and nerdy as you are. So they've been there and done that. So, but you know what they haven't done? They haven't been the person to do it. They haven't had the story center around them before. So, are you going to come up with something new and original? Probably not, but you don't need to. Because you know what? We've read the stories over and over again. They've just been dressed up differently.
Right.
What do you think? Where do you come up with your inspiration?
For me, I try and do the same thing. I've run a number of different quests or campaigns that have been adaptations of novels that I've been a part of, or things that have been inspired loosely by something that I read. I think books provide the most in-depth amount of material because, as we said before, and I ran a Dresden campaign for a while, and based off of the Jim Butcher's Dresden Files, but he also did another series called Alara, and while it was only loosely based on that, I had a campaign where the civilization had fled from this alien army that started taking over by creating their natural swamp. Well, that was similar to the already been done in the Alara novels, but I twisted it. I changed what the monsters were. I made them far more alien and bizarre looking just to look at, as well as the fact that as opposed to having the green croach that looked super alien to the people, I made it some kind of natural swamp that they just kind of help foster and grow.
Well, that makes me think too, like about the Croach and those very novels. If you haven't read them, go check them out. They're really good books. But if you think back to StarCraft, right, and the Zerg, right,
Mm-hmm.
what did they basically do? They had to turn the land into something they could build on in order to keep expanding your army. And I'm sure StarCraft wasn't the first one to do that idea. That whole idea of actually changing the land and this spreading disease that affects the land. Even in essence, if you go back to King Arthur and the final story, they're looking for the Grail because the sickness has come over the land.
Mm-hmm.
So
how far back does the changing landscape of the bad guy come into effect? So it's twist all down the line.
Right, who knows? There's probably the same story on a cave and a wall somewhere. Some caveman chiseled, but they're still, each time it felt new and invigorating and entertaining. And there's other things too, like the hero's journey, which is just basically a storytelling device. Now in D&D or Pathfinder or whatever role-playing game you're playing, it's a little different because you don't actually have any control over your heroes, right? But in essence, they should be going through that journey anyway,
Right.
where they start off as the novice and they gain more and more experience and they're better able to handle themselves when situations arise and interact with the story that you create and overcome it and grow as characters. That's what you're doing. You're creating that environment for them to be able to grow. And it's the very inspiration that we draw from the books, the movies, the comic books, you name it. Or even I've actually taken stuff from the news, stuff that's going on in the world, and translated it into a game world.
Well, when you're playing things that are more modern, as we've done a lot of superhero games lately. When I ran the Dresden game, those are things that are taking place in modern day. So you've got cars and a modern setting, so you can have those types of aspects. But I mean, if you're having a completely fantasy game, it's a lot harder to use that kind of stuff on a regular basis.
Maybe, but maybe not, because here's the thing, right? Like if you start taking like things that are going on politically today and start integrating that into your game. Now, I mean in a fantasy way, like I don't want to see any donkeys or elephants in my game, right? And I don't want anything to correlate directly to what's actually going on in the real world. As a matter of fact, it's bad because people get really heated about that kind of stuff. And it'll mess up your whole gaming experience. But if you can take certain ideas from what's going on in politics and the news and around the world and you can start integrating that. If there's civil unrest, right? Mm-hmm. You can have civil unrest in a fantasy world. It doesn't have to be. It's not limited to a modern thing. Like people always have the same problems. They always have the same needs, the same desires.
So if you have, even if you're playing in a fantasy game and you've got a king, and the king is saying, this is what's going on. In our, democratic view, the president is saying this is what's going on. You could have people who are quote unquote campaigning against that. It depends upon what level of what's the word I'm looking for? What level of politics your game is involved with. If you have a hardcore fantasy group that's all about the hack and slash and they're killing stuff, they might not have a care to get into a political debate or draw over the person in power. But if you have a very heavy role-playing group, that might be a serious catalyst for is the kingdom ready for some kind of change or upheaval or uprising.
Well, let's go with that. Suppose, right, they're not interested in the role-playing stuff, but what if this thing that's going on in game, the king levies a tax on bread, right? So it starts an uprising or a revolt. Well, they can be involved with that. Or, what if, there's a tariff that's placed on another kingdom over certain goods and the two kingdoms go to war over it.
Right.
Or there's a dispute over land. So these can all really turn into, not just role-playing, but role-playing incidences as well, as they have to battle this stuff. Or what if there's an immigrant of a monster species or race into an area, right? And of course the players, they want to drive them out because they're monsters and you don't want monsters living in your hood, right? But what if there's more to that? What if there's a reason why they got pushed there?
Right.
Because the croaches all end up in their hood, pushing them out with these bug hive things, So there's so many different directions that everything can kind of like feed into everything. And as you see, we just kind of told a little bit of a story that was inspired from a book we read years ago on the fly. We didn't script it or anything. We just threw some things out there.
So I mean, there's lots to work with. A lot of the movies that are out there, kind of stem from, books and comic books these days. So it's, very easy to use what's in the movies or, go back to the actual book material, as the source and get more information. I think the most successful, thing that I've done is you just take that little twist off of, a tidbit. You don't need the entire breadth of a novel or the breadth of, an entire novel series to be able to say, all right, this is what I'm going to work with. You just say, okay, I like this concept. Let me see how I can expand on it, twist on it, just change it enough to make it unique and make it your own. And then just start, inflating that idea, to your campaign proportions.
Well, I think too with role-playing games, especially fantasy-based ones, when you take more of a modern idea or something that's driven by science, you can easily convert the science aspect into magic,
right?
Which then actually makes it a much different animal. And it's like you said, when you just take that one seed to start your campaign and get it going, and then you start from there, and it starts to build out. Your players start doing things and making choices that you never expected. So you, as a DM, then have to go into another direction, and then it just keeps branching out until you've actually organically created a brand new story out of something that was maybe old trope.
Right. So as you're saying, the science. It's like, oh well, we're it hasn't been a hot topic in the news lately, but cloning and genetic engineering and whatnot. Well, what happens if there's a mage who is doing that, magically and ritually?
Well, you read the novels. What about Dragon Realms? They created basically clones or golems to inhabit, to move to a new world.
Yep.
And it went horribly wrong, of course, because pseudoscience or magic science always goes horribly wrong.
Of course.
But the point is, like, it's been done so many different ways, and it's fun.
Right.
As gamers, I think that's what we live for. That's what we love. So if you're a GM, dungeon master, and you're struggling to figure out what am I going to write, instead of worrying about what you're going to write, go do what you enjoy. I mean, if you're nerds like us, you like sci-fi, you like fantasy, and just enjoy it for what it is, and go. And you do that enough, you're just going, oh, that's a great idea. I want to put that in my campaign.
Keep reading, keep watching the television shows that focus on, your likes and interests, between TVs, movies, books, and just see what's out there. And before you know it, you're going to find something that is just going to be like, there you go. There's an idea to run with.
Here's a great example of TV influencing a book in a genre that it just doesn't, you wouldn't have thought about it. Okay, so basically in the Wild Card series, they did a reality TV show, but with the wild cards, which are like superheroes, and they would set up all these mock challenges for them that they would have to overcome as a superhero team, and those ones that don't perform are going to be judged and voted off by real superheroes. And because I was going to say, just don't look at reality TV, it'll rot your brain, but there's an example of a story being driven by reality TV and what's going on in today's news and in today's environment, and they turned it into a book on itself. And let's face it, if you could turn it into a book, you can turn it into a role-playing campaign.
Absolutely.
So
I think that about covers it for today.
It's a starter anyway. Look, if you guys have any questions, if there's something you'd like us to talk about, hey, maybe you disagree with us and you think there's a better way to do it, let us know in the comments below. Hit like,
hit subscribe.
And until next time, stay nerdy,
my friends.